Bismillah, the next section here, Imam al-Bahuti rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, فَصْلٌ فِي الْآنِيَةِ وَيُبَاحُ كُلُّ إِنَاءٍ وَلَوْ ثَمِينٍ غَيْرَ إِنَاءِ ذَهَبٍ أَوْ فِضَّةٍ وَنَحْوِ مَطْلِيٍ بِهِمَا إِلَّا مُضَبَّبًا بِيَسِيرٍ مِنْ فِضَّةٍ لِحَاجَةٍ وتصح طهارة من إناء محرم وتباح آنية كفار وثيابهم إن جهل حالها ولا يطهر جلد ميتة بدبغ ويباح استعماله بعده في يابس إن كان من طاهر في حياة وكل أجزاء الميتة ولبنها نجس غير نحو شعر وصوف وما أبين من حي كميتته. All right. So here in the next section, we should say this is actually an entire different chapter. According to the chapter heading, we're talking about vessels. So vessels, we talked about water previously. Obviously, water is going to be held in a container or a vessel, and if you watch those previous videos, you will know that I constantly referred to the container or the vessel or the body of water. So we're talking about what the water is in. And so here, vessels, the great Imam al-Bahuti rahimahullah ta'ala says, which are pure, okay, pure vessels, tahir, regardless of their material, even if expensive, which are not gold. So if they're expensive, they're made of other fine quality, high quality materials, marble or certain metals or crystal, something of that nature that may be very expensive, which are not gold or silver. Gold and silver are currencies in Islam. Traditional currencies of gold and silver, and they should be circulating in the economy. They should not be held up in cutlery, forks, knives, and spoons, or like plates, bowls, and trinkets, or decorative items. All right, gold and silver are either currency or they're used as jewelry, and that's about it. Or gold or silver plated, apart from minimal necessary silver soldering. All right, repair work. Not gold and silver decorative design, but silver solder, which is required for a broken vessel to be repaired, that's permitted. But not like little designs of gold and silver on the particular vessel. Those are not permitted. Both of which are impermissible for males, females, and hermaphrodites, regardless of age, to possess and use. Okay, so gold and silver vessels are impermissible for everyone. Just because a woman is permitted to wear gold jewelry and men are permitted to wear silver jewelry, it doesn't permit them. It doesn't permit them to use gold and silver vessels or cutlery or cups, glasses, plates, or even to possess gold and silver decorative items. No, it's jewelry and that's it. So you can't possess it, you can't use it, and because of that, you can't sell it. Meaning, not jewelry, these other items. Regardless if you're male, female, hermaphrodite, regardless of age, to possess or use, or vessels made from human skin or bone. Okay, now why would if this is Ibn Qa'id, by the way, you're not going to see this from Umdat al-Talib. This is from the explanation by Imam Ibn Qa'id al-Najdi rahimahullah ta'ala. Why is he mentioning human skin and bone? Because human skin and bone are pure. A deceased human is not najis. They're pure. Okay, and we talked about pure vessels. But you can't go using human and human material like human skin and bone to create a vessel, to carve out a bowl or something to hold water or something from a bone, or to use human skin as to make a bag. That's not what human remains are used for. They're to be honored and they're to be buried, or that which has been wrongfully confiscated. So something stolen or misappropriated, even if it's pure, it's impermissible to have and to use. Other than those things are permissible. So basically what he's saying is vessels, even if expensive, which are not gold, silver, etc., are permissible to possess and use. Okay, so any and all besides the gold. So the prohibition of gold and silver vessels is based on 2 hadith. We're going back to looking at some evidence, as was promised at this level of study. And this is a basic introduction to how evidence is employed. Both of these hadith are muttafaqun alayh. Okay? The first is reported on the authority of Hudhayfa, who heard the Prophet ﷺ say, "Do not drink from gold or silver vessels, and do not eat on such plates, for they are for them in this life and for you in the next. For them, he is talking about the non-Muslims. Now, this hadith does not mean that they are permissible for non-Muslims. According to the Hanabila, according to our school of thought, our school of law, non-Muslims are also required to follow the peculiars of the Islamic law. Not only are they required to accept faith, but they're required, even as non-Muslims, to follow the peculiars, the rulings of Islamic law. What this hadith is indicating by the Prophet ﷺ saying they are for them is the non-Muslims' attitude towards them and the manner in which they have taken them. The non-Muslims have taken such objects, and their attitude is that they are permissible for them, and that has been given to them, if you will, to their own demise, to their own destruction. It's a form of istidraj. Basically, like, not only would a non-Muslim be punished for their disbelief, but the punishment would increase based on the level of sin that they committed in this life. And that's why, wal-iyadhu billah, the hellfire, the Jahannam, has darakat. There are levels to that, right? That descend worse and worse as you go lower. So those things are taken into account and applied in such a way, and we seek Allah's refuge from such a thing. The second hadith on the authority of Salama is reported that the Prophet ﷺ said, the fire of hell will bubble in the belly of whoever drinks from gold or silver vessels. This hadith also encompasses the employment of such vessels in other acts besides eating and drinking. The nature of this hadith, remember, there's a mantuq, and then there's a mafhum. There's what was said, and there's what was understood and implied. And so the specific reference to eating and drinking is based on the fact that eating and drinking are the most obvious uses of these vessels. They're most obviously used to eat and drink. However, simply possessing them is also impermissible. That is what is understood from the hadith. Again, there's something on the for face value, but then there's an underlayer to that of understanding that has to be considered when arriving at conclusions, right? You want to be totally thorough. Okay, that's the issue of gold and silver. Purification, however, from an impermissible vessel is valid, right? So if you were to use a bowl or a silver bowl or vessel or container which held the water, if you did use that to hold water to make wudu, it would be valid. Obviously, it would be sinful, but it would be valid because the vessel itself is not a requisite for either purification or prayer. The type of vessel is not considered as a prerequisite. So vessels and clothing of the disbelievers, be they people of the book or otherwise, are permissible if their condition is unknown, meaning you don't know that it is impure. Again, we go back to the idea that these things are, the baseline ruling for these things is that they're pure. I don't know that they're impure, so I'm not going to inquire. I'm not going to take a guess. I'm not going to assume that they are impure. They are not known to be impure, even if they have come in contact, even with their body, right? Even with the body of the non-Muslim. And you know what I'm talking about. They come in contact with the body. Non-Muslims have a different manner of personal hygiene, etc. Different level of personal hygiene, especially when they answer the call to nature and how they clean up after that. So unless it's obvious, right? Unless you can see and it becomes obvious, then it's permissible to use. Basically, like, you could borrow their clothes to pray in, or something that you borrow their pots and pans to cook with, unless it was obvious that there was some type of najasa that needed to be removed. Jump down to a next issue here, and that is about the hide of carcass. Imam al-Buhuti says, tanning does not purify the hide of a carcass. And many of you know we use leather products on a regular basis. Leather products, the leather is made usable through this process of tanning. Okay, that's where, they treat the leather, they remove all of the fleshy matter, and then they basically are able to dry the leather so that it is now a workable material, a usable material. However, it does not purify the hide of a carcass. What's a carcass? The carcass is the dead creature which has not been slaughtered according to the Islamic law, or it's a dead creature which is an impermissible one, an impermissible and impure one. Because, the death of an animal that hasn't been slaughtered, even if it's a cow, which a lot of the leather we use is from cow hide, or camel, or something of that nature, if it hasn't been slaughtered, even though the animal's permissible, upon the death of that animal, natural death, the carcass becomes najis. That carcass is najis. It's only made pure through the act of ritual slaughter. And this prohibition is based on the Prophet ﷺ abrogating a previous concession. And that's why there are some differing views as to whether tanning the hide of a carcass purifies the animal. According to the Hanabila, there was at one point a concession in which the Prophet ﷺ permitted the use of tanned carcass hide as a concession, which was later abrogated. And this initial concession permitted their unrestricted use. Though it's been reported by al-Tabarani and Daraqutni, these are other imams that have collected hadith, that the Prophet ﷺ, he said, I once provided you with a concession regarding the leather of a carcass. Okay? But if my message, this message, reaches you, you are not to seek such benefit from the carcass's skin or tendons. So here you can see that we've removed that concession. However, Imam al-Buhuti says, it is permissible to use afterward, meaning after the tanning process. The tanning process which employs permissible agents, right? The process, there are agents, or we would say chemicals, that are used. The agents have to be permissible to do so. Now, tanning can be done with the brain of the animal, okay? But if the animal is deceased, it's a carcass, the brain is najis. Okay, so we have to be looking at external agents, permissible agents, to remove moisture and impurity in such a way that it would not be ruined, meaning the leather, the skin would not be ruined if dunked in water. That's kind of a measure of whether the skin has gone through the tanning process completely or not. So you can use it for dry goods, meaning currency, money, paper, stuff like that, barley, oats. And here I draw your attention to stuff that's modern day, we use all the time, like wallets, bags, briefcases, those things that are made of leather of a carcass. We know that the origin of the leather is not from halal sources. Okay, so can you use that? You can use it for dry goods. You can't use it for wet goods, meaning like a water skin. That's not a very typical thing today. But a wallet or a purse or a bag, a leather, is. Now, you have to remember the nature of these things, right? They're not purified. So if you carry around a leather wallet, a leather phone case, for example, that you know is not from a pure source, halal, it's not pure, you can't carry that with you in prayer, or like a bag. And you're certainly not going to wear a leather jacket. We're not talking about permitting it for clothing. We're permitting it to be used for dry goods. You're not going to wear like a leather jacket or leather pants or whatever, knowing that it is from a carcass. Leather shoes, knowing that it is from a carcass. You can wear leather goods if they're purified through the process of slaughtering and then tanning. But if you have a wallet that you know is from carcass leather, then you have to take that out of your pocket, because you can't pray while carrying something that is najasa. That's something to be considered, though it is permissible to use according to the madhab. And there are other conditions to this, so long as the animal was pure while living, such as a cow, camel, a sheep, etc., but not an animal which we consider to be impure, like a donkey, or any other impermissible creature like a snake or an alligator. Shark skin. In the madhab, those are not edible animals. They're impure animals, and so you couldn't use like a snakeskin wallet or something of that nature. And I know that's not very prevalent, but it is available. It says, every part of a carcass, such as its meat, fat, brain, bone, tendons, horns, nails, as well as its milk is impure. The milk is impure, and those other things because they've come in contact with an impure vessel, meaning the carcass itself. So all of those parts are impure, meaning you can't go harvesting just a few parts and say, look, the meat's impure, we can't eat it. The skin's impure, we can't use it, but we can harvest the brain, the bone, the tendons, the horns, the nails, etc. Or even the milk while it is inside the carcass of the body. You can't go removing and extracting the milk. The milk is impure because it is now the animal is dead, and the milk has come in contact with its vessel, which is inside of the animal, in the udder or wherever it may be. And so now it's come in contact with najasa, and simply the contact enough is sufficient to spoil its pure quality. Besides hair, wool, etc., like feather. And the reason that they make an exception for hair, wool, and feathers is because those things contain no life, and therefore they're not impacted by the animal's death. The other things like the horns, the nails, the tendons, all that contains life, and you can see, like, look, if it's a warm-blooded animal, those things become warm. If they're damaged, the animal becomes hurt, unlike its hair, wool, or its feathers. And this is based on the generality, specifically in verse 80 of Surah An-Nahl. What's translated, and from their wool, fur, and hair is furnishing an enjoyment provision for a time. And because this hadith is general, it doesn't mention whether the animal is alive or dead. These things have been permitted by way of the Quran very explicitly. And the last part here, the last little note of this chapter, he says, whatever is severed from the living is equivalent to its carcass in regards to it being pure or impure, with a few exceptions. So, if you cut something off of an animal while it was alive, then is that pure or impure? It will be based on the nature of the animal while it is living. And that concludes this portion of the text.